Imagine standing in front of a mirror. Your face looks back at you, familiar, solid, recognizable. And yet, deep behind your eyes, in a place no mirror can reach, something else exists, something hidden, something you may never fully want to see. Sigmund Freud called it the unconscious, and he believed that what truly drives us is not what we consciously think, but what we secretly hide from ourselves. Freud placed a disturbing truth at the heart of his theory. Humans constantly lie to themselves. We do it not because we are weak or immoral, but because we must. The mind, he said, is like a house with many rooms. Consciousness is only the brightly lit chamber we occupy, but deep in the basement, behind locked doors, lies everything we cannot bear. Repressed desires, forbidden fears, unspoken conflicts. And every time something from that basement pushes toward the light, our mind responds with a lie. A lie designed to protect us. These self-deceptions are not small excuses. They are woven into the very architecture of the psyche. Freud called them defense mechanisms. When the truth is too dangerous, the mind invents stories we can live with. We rationalize our failures instead of facing our fears. We project our hidden impulses onto others instead of admitting them. We bury memories too painful to recall, and all of it happens without our awareness. Freud saw the human being as locked in a permanent war with himself. On one side stands the id, the raw animal part of us, demanding pleasure and satisfaction. On the other side stands the superego, the moral overseer, burdening us with guilt, shame, and rules. And in between struggles the ego, desperately trying to maintain peace. But this peace is fragile, and it often comes at a cost. To survive this conflict, we deceive ourselves. We tell comforting stories, building a fragile world we call reality, but which is often just a carefully constructed illusion. Perhaps you wonder, why would I lie to myself? Am I not a rational being, seeking truth? Freud's answer was unsettling. No. You do not want truth. You want to endure. The truth is often unbearable, too heavy, too destructive, too raw. If you saw every hidden desire, every suppressed fear, every shadow of your past, you might collapse under the weight. That is why your mind builds a filter, an invisible wall to protect you. You do not see the world as it is, you see it as you can bear it. This is why self-deception is so effective. It feels natural, invisible, convincing. You don't even notice you are doing it. When you say, "I didn't want that job anyway," you protect yourself from rejection. When you think, "Everyone else is to blame," you shield yourself from your own mistakes. When you criticize others for desires you secretly carry, you protect yourself from facing them. And so, little by little, we create a second reality, a stage where we play our roles while the true script is written behind the scenes, deep in the unconscious. Freud once said, "The ego is not master in its own house." We believe we are in control, but often we are merely actors, following a script that was written long before we could choose. This is Freud's first uncomfortable lesson. We are not who we think we are. We are not fully honest with ourselves. We live in a web of illusions that protect us but also imprison us. And the most dangerous lies are not the ones others tell us. They are the ones we whisper to ourselves every day, in every thought, in every choice. Freud did not see self-deception as a flaw of character, but as a built-in survival strategy. The human mind is fragile. Consciousness is only a thin layer, and beneath it surge forces that could overwhelm us if left unchecked. To keep us functioning, the psyche invents strategies, ingenious lies that remain invisible even to ourselves. Freud called them defense mechanisms. They are the hidden shields that protect us from collapsing under the unbearable weight of truth. One of the most well-known is repression. Anything too painful, too threatening, too unacceptable is pushed deep into the unconscious. Traumatic experiences, forbidden desires, unbearable guilt, they are locked away, but they do not disappear. They continue to live underground, influencing us through dreams, slips of the tongue, sudden anxieties. Repression is like covering a smoldering fire with ashes. It looks extinguished, but it burns silently, waiting for a moment to break out. Another is projection. This is perhaps the most deceptive lie because it turns our inner battles into outer enemies. We see in others what we cannot bear to see in ourselves. The person who constantly accuses others of arrogance may be hiding their own. The one who obsesses over other people's dishonesty may be wrestling with their own temptation to deceive. Projection, allows us to point the finger outward, preserving our self-image, but at the cost of distorting our perception of reality. Then there is rationalization. This defense mechanism turns our actions into tidy, logical stories. We fail an exam and say, "I didn't study because it wasn't important anyway." We sabotage a relationship and insist, "They weren't the right person." Rationalization paints our fear as wisdom, our avoidance as reason, our mistakes as strategy. It lets us keep believing we are rational beings, even when fear and desire are the true puppeteers. These defenses are not random quirks. They are universal, deeply embedded in the human psyche. Every one of us uses them, often daily. Without them, life might be unbearable. With them, life is manageable, but at the cost of honesty. We construct lives that are partly staged, guided by scripts we barely notice. We play roles in stories we convince ourselves are true, even when they are not. Freud understood that these mechanisms do not only shape trivial excuses, they guide entire destinies. A person who represses their true passions may choose a career that feels safe, but empty. A person who constantly projects their guilt may destroy relationships, seeing enemies everywhere. A person who rationalizes their fear of risk may live a life of avoidance, calling it prudence. In this way, our lies silently become the architects of our lives. The most unsettling part is that these lies feel genuine. We believe in them wholeheartedly. We wake up each morning convinced we are being honest with ourselves. But in reality, as Freud put it, the ego is not master in its own house. We inhabit a palace of mirrors, and each mirror shows us only what we are able to endure. And yet Freud did not present this as pure despair. He believed that by becoming aware of these mechanisms, by analyzing our dreams, our slips, our patterns, we could begin to unmask the illusions. We may never escape them entirely, but we can weaken their grip. Awareness does not erase self-deception, but it shines a light on it, giving us the possibility of choice. That choice comes at a cost. To peel away a lie is to face pain directly. It is to admit weakness, to confront shame, to acknowledge desire. But in doing so, we reclaim fragments of truth. And in those fragments lies the beginning of freedom. When Freud spoke of the unconscious, he did not imagine it as a chaotic void, but as a system of forces locked in constant struggle. He described three players: the I, the E, and the S. These are not physical parts of the brain, but psychological realities, inner rulers shaping our choices, our feelings, even our lies. And their conflict is the reason we deceive ourselves. The id is the oldest force, the primal animal within us. It knows nothing of morality, nothing of restraint. It demands pleasure, satisfaction, release. Hunger, lust, aggression, all surge from the id. It operates on a single principle: the pursuit of gratification, no matter the cost. It is life stripped to its rawest instinct, the beast we try to cage, but never tame. Facing it is the superego, the strict voice of morality and social order. It is the internalized parent, the teacher, the priest, the law. It punishes with guilt, shame, and anxiety. It demands obedience to rules, loyalty to ideals, sacrifice of instinct. Where the id screams for indulgence, the superego whispers judgment. It is the ever-present I, watching, condemning, reminding us of who we should be, even when no one else is watching. And caught between them is the ego, the conscious self. Its task is impossible: to keep peace between the raging demands of the id and the merciless punishments of the superego, while still navigating the external world. The ego must negotiate, compromise, disguise. It must satisfy enough of the id to keep us alive, obey enough of the superego to keep us accepted, and hide the tensions so we don't collapse under their weight. This balancing act is fragile. The ego cannot always withstand the pressure, and so it lies. It invents the defense mechanisms that Freud described. Instead of facing the id's raw desires, it represses them. Instead of admitting the superego's unbearable guilt, it rationalizes it. Instead of acknowledging the war, it projects it outward. These lies are not flaws, they are survival tactics. Without them, the ego would be crushed in the crossfire. But these lies come at a cost. They keep us intact, but they also keep us divided. They allow us to live, but not fully. The desires of the id leak through in dreams, slips of the tongue, sudden impulses we can't explain. The harsh judgments of the superego haunt us in self-criticism, in the nagging sense that we are never good enough. And the ego, exhausted from holding the line, convinces us that everything is fine, even as the truth vibrates beneath the surface. Freud called this the human condition, to be torn between instinct and morality, between desire and duty. We are not free agents, calmly weighing choices. We are battlegrounds. Our lives are shaped by invisible negotiations, and the stories we tell ourselves are simply the treaties that allow us to keep functioning. This is why self-deception is so universal. The id demands too much, the superego forbids too much, and the ego cannot cope without illusions. When you lie to yourself, it is not weakness, it is survival. Your psyche is protecting you from collapse. And yet, Freud believed there was power in recognizing this drama. To name the id, ego, and superego is to begin to see the stage on which we live. To notice that your anger may be the id bursting through, or your guilt the superego's whip, is to loosen their grip. You may not silence them, but you can start to understand their language. The truth Freud left us is uncomfortable, but liberating. We are not masters of ourselves, but we can become students of our own illusions. And in learning to see the play, we may find a new kind of honesty, not the absence of self-deception, but the courage to face it. If Freud were alive today, he would not have to look far to find evidence for his theories. Self-deception, which he saw as the hidden machinery of the mind, is now visible everywhere, in our shopping habits, in our relationships, in our politics, and most vividly, in the digital theater of social media. Take consumerism. We rarely buy because we need. We buy to tell ourselves stories. The new phone is not just a device, it is proof that we are keeping up, that we are not being left behind. The luxury watch is not just a tool to measure time, it is a symbol that we matter. Deep down we may feel emptiness, but at the surface we whisper to ourselves, I deserve this. I need this. The market thrives not on necessities but on illusions, selling us products that soothe the ego caught between the id's cravings and the superego's demands. Relationships, too, are saturated with these lies. We convince ourselves that we stay because of love, when often it is fear of loneliness. We insist we leave because the other changed, when it may be us who cannot face our own shadows. We say we want the right partner, when often we are unconsciously seeking someone to carry our repressed desires or unresolved conflicts. Love, in Freud's view, is rarely free of projection, and the deeper the emotion, the stronger the deception. Politics operates on the same principle, but on a larger scale. Entire societies live inside collective self-deceptions. We tell ourselves our systems are fair, our nations are noble, our leaders serve our interests. But often these are rationalizations to mask uncomfortable truths. Aggression is projected outward. The enemy is always the other. Guilt is rationalized. Wars become defense. Exploitation becomes progress. Just as the individual lies to survive inner conflict, societies lie to survive their contradictions. And then there is social media, perhaps the purest display of Freud's insight. Here the ego builds its mask for the world, curating images of perfection, flawless bodies, glamorous lifestyles, endless success. Behind the stage lies insecurity, fear, emptiness. But instead of facing those feelings, we plaster over them with likes and filters. Each post is a small rationalization. Look, I am fine. Each story is a shield against the raw truth of being human. The tragedy is that these lies bring short-term relief but long-term estrangement. The more we deceive ourselves, the further we drift from who we are. We bury ourselves in purchases, in roles, in political myths, in digital masks. We feed the ego with illusions until it loses touch with its own depths. And here Freud's theory becomes more relevant than ever. Modern culture is a vast machinery of self-deception, an industry of illusions designed to keep the conflict hidden. But repression does not last forever. The unconscious has a way of returning. It breaks through in burnout, when the carefully managed mask collapses. It erupts in depression, when the facade can no longer hold. It surfaces in political crises, when the collective lies of nations unravel. And it sneaks into quiet moments, when we suddenly sense that the life we are living does not truly belong to us. The unconscious does not ask for permission, it waits. And sooner or later, it knocks on the door. The question is not whether we lie to ourselves. We all do. The real question is how long those lies can hold before the truth demands to be faced. Freud's theory does not end with exposure. It forces us to face a larger, unsettling question. Can we ever truly free ourselves from our self-deceptions? Or are we condemned to live forever in illusions, driven by an unconscious we can never fully master? Freud himself was cautious. For him, the unconscious was not a locked box we could simply open with effort and will. It was the very foundation of our being. Even if we pull back some layers, even if we recognize some of our patterns, we will never fully escape them. The ID will always whisper. The superego will always judge. The ego will always lie to hold them together. In Freud's view, human freedom is not absolute clarity, but the fragile awareness that we are never entirely in control. But paradoxically, this awareness is also a gift. To know that you lie to yourself is already to lie a little less. To recognize that your rationalizations are excuses is to see a glimpse of the truth behind them. To admit that your projections are mirrors is to begin the hard work of owning your shadows. The first step toward honesty is not the illusion of purity, it is the courage to acknowledge impurity. Philosophers like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard would have recognized this. Nietzsche urged us to tear off our masks and endure the raw intensity of existence, even if it hurt. Kierkegaard spoke of the anxiety that comes with becoming authentic, the leap into selfhood that requires us to face truths we would rather avoid. Freud's contribution was to make this even more intimate, even more uncomfortable. The greatest enemy of truth is not the lie told by others, but the lie whispered by your own mind. Perhaps we will never live entirely free of these whispers, but we can learn to listen to them differently, in dreams that reveal what we try to bury, in slips of the tongue that betray what we secretly desire, in sudden emotions that emerge from nowhere but point to something unresolved. To notice these signs is not to escape self-deception, but to live more consciously with it. This does not mean abandoning all defenses. We need them. Without them, we might collapse under the weight of our own psyche. But we do not need to be enslaved by them. We can learn to see through our illusions without destroying ourselves. We can carry our lies lightly, knowing they are lies, instead of mistaking them for unshakable truths. Perhaps real freedom is not the absence of self-deception, but the willingness to face it. To know that we are not masters in our own house, yet still to open the doors and look inside. To accept that we cannot control every shadow, but we can stop pretending the shadows aren't there. In this way, Freud's message is not despair, but invitation. It is an invitation to live with greater honesty, even if imperfectly, to risk discomfort for the sake of clarity, to notice when the stories we tell ourselves are just stories, and to choose when we can to step a little closer to reality. The unconscious will never disappear, but our blindness to it can. And maybe this is the highest form of truth available to us. Not purity, not mastery, but the courage to recognize our own illusions and to keep reaching again and again for what lies beyond them. If this video made you think, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective.